Clinton-Obama for Middle East Policy, Part 2. I want to go back to the creating a Middle East economic community that was put in place by Obama and Clinton in the Middle East. And I want to say that the issues with this particular policy is that we do know that it was written before Barack Obama was elected to president in the United States in 2008. And the real question is, why is that important? Well, why is it important? It indicates by being written before 2008, when Barack Obama was put into place, it was also written in anticipation of certain actions occurring in the Middle East, which we know as the Arab Spring of 2011. Now, you don't write a plan and put a plan in place for action unless you are already anticipating that action is going to happen. And the only way you can ensure it happens is if somehow you or somebody you know actually has put together a program of incitement to cause these things to happen. In the Middle East, this particular article talks about Tunisia, it talks about Libya, it talks about Syria, and it's talking about Syria in 2011, as early as 2011. The issue that I would like to bring out about this, and it being written prior to the Arab Spring occurring, is that if you don't know that a certain thing is going to happen, you don't develop a plan and you don't build a policy. You don't put together a restoration program. Now, here's the thing. What this policy was intended to do was intended to overthrow or essentially provide the ability to rebuild certain countries in the Middle East in anticipation of these countries being overthrown, being put into turmoil, so to speak. Basically, that means that this plan was drafted with full knowledge that the Arab Spring was going to be a circumstance which led to millions of people being displaced around the globe from the Middle East, as we now see has happened. It would also include full knowledge that other things will occur, that there will be bloodshed, that there will be genocide, there will be mass executions, ethnic cleansings, that there will be hundreds of thousands, if not upwards into the millions of people being killed, outright killed, that are not active participants in the particular wars that are going on. And not only that, but there is also the very real probability that women and children are going to be sold into slavery and raped. These are things that happen in war. So anyone drafting this particular plan and saying, well, this is what we want to do, we want to push the Arab Spring, we want to make it happen, and then we want to also have a plan in place to address the problems that arise from it. This is that plan. It is very consistent with the United Nations policies and plans. It is very consistent. It lays it out. It's very consistent with the last I knew 221 individual mandates under the Sustainable Development Program. In fact, it also references certain dates in here, such as they're talking about the United Nations forecast, which points up to a 60% increase in the population in the Middle East by 2050. They're also talking about a youth bulge. They're talking about various issues that they see arising. They talk about the problem with lack of jobs, and that's going to lead to a rise in terrorism around the globe. I mean, certainly we could have found a better way of addressing these problems in the Middle East so that all wars could be ended by 2030, as the United Nations would like to see, by doing something other than actually undermining these governments and toppling the regimes and leaving power vacuums in those regions, in those particular communities. And this is exactly what was done. We left power vacuums. The only one that really doesn't have a complete power vacuum at this particular point in time is Syria, because the power is kind of divided up between the Islamic State, which used Egypt is also another country, and that is simply that has no power vacuum there, and that is because of the coup which resulted in Sisi coming to power after taking that power back away from the Muslim Brotherhood. And that's another issue that we want to get onto real quick. I'm going to bring up, let's see, right here, we need to bring up this particular page. We want to bring up an email. This is a document that I translated from a Muslim Brotherhood website. It was one that is in a completely Arabic version. If you go on the Arabic versions, the stories on those are not the same stories and not the same articles or reports that are found on the English website called ikhwan.web. This is a different one. You can see at the header here, there are still some of the dates and the wordings, the title of the document all in Arabic. We left that intentionally. And you can also see from some of the writing, the way it's written, that it is a translation and not exactly a very good one. But this talks about America's role in the military coup. It's an article that was written by Dr. Mahmoud Ghazlan. I think that's what pronunciation. It's Ghzlan. He was the spokesperson. He was a spokesperson of the Muslim Brotherhood at the time that this was written, back in July 16th of 2013. And they're talking about the revolution of 25 January 21 is not what you want the United States. It says it gave rise to a system of continued, something about overcoming the policy of the West, and head of the treasure is strategically to Israel. Anyway, did not recognize the American Revolution, blah, blah, blah. But the thing that catches my attention is the very next segment here. Tried to American abortion revolution. Now this is Dr. Mahmoud Ghazlan, says that he spent $105 million over the past several months on the Egyptian and foreign organizations to create chaos in Egypt in order to drop the revolution. It has been recognized by Ambassador, and in parentheses, Ann Patterson, in the United States Congress, spent these monies. And I have seen the Egyptian minister, Fazia Abul-Naga, that these funds had been the target of their expenditure. Basically, they're saying that 105 million U.S. taxpayer dollars was given to them to use that Ambassador Ann Patterson was involved in those monies being spent to bring about the overthrow of the Egyptian government, one of our allies. Why? Well, that's because the individual that was running the country, even though he was our friend and our ally, he was also an autocratic government. He basically was a dictator who got along great with the United States. The problem was we sponsored the Muslim Brotherhood's rise to power in Egypt. Now, since when has it been the policy of the United States to spend taxpayer dollars in the Middle East, overthrowing governments that are our friends and that are not a threat to us? Now, if we weren't involved in the Arab Spring, then why the hell is the Muslim Brotherhood indicating that we did play a big part in what took place in Egypt? Now, we've seen a lot of articles that indicate, oh yes, well, it's because of this reason and that reason. But here's one that comes straight from the Muslim Brotherhood that very well points out that this administration, our current administration, spent U.S. taxpayer dollars to help create the very problem that currently exists in Egypt between the current administration, the Muslim Brotherhood, and all of the problems that occurred after we spent that $105 million to bring the Muslim Brotherhood to power. It is our spending that money that caused the revolution to throw Morsi out of office. Now, let me ask you another thing. There was an article that came out, or a couple of articles that came out a while back about Nagla Mahmood. And in that it talks about how Nagla Mahmood had made accusations that Hillary Clinton feared Nagla Mahmood. Now, who is Nagla Mahmood? Nagla Mahmood is the wife of the Muslim Brotherhood elected president to Egypt, who was overthrown and just received a life sentence. Now, why is this important to us? Well, it's important to us because Nagla Mahmood indicated that she had a treasure trove of documents, White House secrets. Sounds to me like quite possibly somebody might have actually gotten access to some records from Hillary's server and is using those quite possibly to hold power over Hillary Clinton, which would certainly be a very dangerous thing for America if Clinton were to be elected President of the United States, if what Nagla Mahmood has said is true. Now, the reason Nagla Mahmood said that this is factual is because she said she recorded these things, that her and Clinton discussed certain events surrounding these two coups, the one where we helped bring the Muslim Brotherhood to power, and also where there was an attempt on Sisi's life. And it is that which Nagla Mahmood says Clinton fears her for. Anyway, there is also, let's go a little further down on this particular article. And here we call Obama, President Mohamed Morsi, more than once to exert pressure in reference to the possibility of continuing economic blockade. At the same time, I have used in the intervention of the Gulf states to stop its money to be used in sabotage inside the Egypt. President Morsi's response to what is intended by Obama, the response of the president refused to respond to these dictates and adherence to the legitimacy of the constitutional and democratic path of the revolution, and in the end gave the green light to the military coup. In other words, he's saying that originally Obama was against it, but then gave a green light to Sisi